Alright guys, this project is going to start out with a piece of 1095 carbon steel, and we're going to cut out our blank, which for now is just going to be a long skinny rectangle. Now that our blank is cut out, we're going to start working on the bevel, and hook knives only have one bevel, so we only need to do this one time. Now the inside of our hook knife needs to be perfectly flat, and you can see here we have a big indent that we need to get rid of. So I'm going to round everything out and get my knife blade to shape, and then I'll take it over to my diamond stone. My plan here is to run the flat side of my blade across my diamond stone until I just work out that divot, and it took a while, but we got there. Beautiful. Then I went back and cleaned up the blade with a file just to refine it and get it exactly how I want it to look like before we put a curve in it. Now I'm sure there's a lot better ways to do this than what I did, but it kind of worked. In the end, do whatever you need to do to get a curve in your blade. I tried to use pliers, and pliers aren't the ideal tool because they're flat, and it'll give you some kinky curves, which if you're into that, that's fine. I'm not here to judge, but personally I like my hook knives to have real round curves so that they can cut round indents in wood. And really just do whatever you need to get a curve in your blade. And we're back to refining the blade before we heat treat it, because once we heat treat it, it'll be a lot harder to work with. And to clean up the inside of the hook knife, I'll wrap a piece of 500 grit sandpaper around a pipe and just use that radius as a sanding block. And as for heat treating, it's pretty simple. Heat up the blade until it turns red hot, quench it in oil, and then temper it in an oven at 450 degrees for an hour, basically until the steel turns like a golden straw color. And while the blade's tempering, I'm going to start working on the handle. I think this is a piece of birch that I milled up about a year ago. I did use power tools to mill it, so if you don't like that, just click out of the video. It doesn't matter to me. So you just saw me rough out the handle shape with a coping saw. Now I'm really just going to let the knife do the work. I'm not trying to get a perfect handle shape or anything. I really just followed the grain and did what was easiest. My reasoning for that is, well, I'm not using any power tools in this project, so I might as well make it look like I'm not using power tools. Like, no power tool will get you a shape like that, and I think that's kind of cool. I did want to get those knife marks out, so I spent a couple hours with sandpaper on that handle. Now that our blade's done tempering, it's time to clean it up, and in my opinion, the inside of the hook knife is going to be needs the most attention. I wanted to make that as perfect as possible. So once I was happy with the inside, I flipped it over, started working on the bevel, and I believe I worked my way up from like 100 to 220 grit sandpaper on just the bevel. Now when it comes to sharpening hook knives, I have no idea what I'm doing, but here you can see me rocking the blade back and forth on the bevel side with a pair of vice grips attached to the blade. And that worked pretty well until I felt like the bevel was pretty established, and then I switched over to just doing it by hand. I could have a little bit more control over the blade and the pressure, and I got it sharp, so I did something right. Then I'll figure out where I want the blade to sit in the handle and drill that hole out. I bought this drill like 3 years ago. I don't think I ever actually used it on a project until now. And I bought it with the intent that like I'd make a no power tool video and I'd use it, but didn't really happen for a really long time. Once the hole is drilled out, I'll turn my attention to the blade. Basically, I'm just going to scuff up the tang of the blade with a hacksaw and files so that the epoxy, which is the glue that I use, will hold on to that blade really tightly. And unfortunately, I didn't really get good video of me during this glue up, but it's pretty simple. Mix up epoxy, pour it in the hole, and jam the blade in the hole. Then I had the idea to try to drill a pinhole through the handle and through the blade, not the other side, to make sure that the blade would stay in there. But that didn't work because I can't drill through metal with a hand drill, just not strong enough. Or maybe the metal was too hard. Let's go with that. I ended up just making this ginormous hole, and I was like, all right, we have to fill this in with something. And luckily, I had another piece of brass that I could super glue in there and make it look like it was decorative, like it was supposed to be there. Now it's time to sharpen it. I have a cheap strop. It's not actual leather. It's like the plywood of leather. They just glue together a bunch of like bits of leather. Either way, it doesn't really matter. I put some buffing compound on it and just stropped the out of this knife. I wanted to make it really, really sharp, and that's just what I did. To strop the inside of the blade, which again is super important, I'm wrapping some denim or blue jean fabric around a pipe, charging that with some buffing compound, and just stropping the inside like I did the outside. You can see here we have a beautiful mirror edge, and let's see how it works. You know, for a homemade hook knife, I'd say that's alright. And when I woke up this morning, this tool didn't even exist. It was a piece of wood and a piece of metal. So I'm really happy with this. The handle is interesting. You're never gonna see something like this come out of a machine or a factory, and I'm happy with that.